I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight, and thank those of you who are joining on YouTube as well. As you know, my opponent was invited to be at this event tonight. He actually accepted on Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday he accepted again after the library had put out a press release that said that they were going to host the event. And in his acceptance, after the library had agreed to host the event, he said he didn't think that the library was a good forum for it because it was a political event, although we just did a debate at the library Tuesday night. He also said we didn't have a moderator. In the rules, I said he could pick a timekeeper / moderator of his choice. So he had the opportunity to do that. Last night, he said he would no longer be willing to participate. Because of that, the library can't host it because it can't just host one of us, because then it does become a political event. And so we're hosting it at Papa Joe's, but I did invite him to come to Papa Joe's. Papa Joe's has a little bit more capacity, so we invited him to bring 15 guests like we did as well for questions. He didn't do so. So I'm still going to be here tonight. He would have been here. We were set up in case he did show up. He didn't. So we're going to begin. I'll start with some opening comments. So if you watched the debate the other night, what you heard a lot from my opponent was he was here for 24 years and he just needed 4 more years. He was here for 24 years. He hired his Democratic deputy committeeman to be the village manager after I was elected, before I was sworn in. That individual was put in precisely to obstruct my agenda. He locked me out of buildings. He blocked my emails. He restricted my access to employees. Very, very challenging. Additionally, he had a board that was 6-1 against me. They were all of his people on the board. So that was what we dealt with for the first 2 years. Then we had a new election. 3 trustees were elected. The village manager resigned. We were able to get a new village manager. It took us 6 months to find them. 6 months later, COVID hit. So essentially, we've had 22 months. And what he said is that he's basically saying everything has fallen apart. Well, he built a house of cards that we've had to deal with. The things that he left behind, the I-80 corridor, nothing had been done in that since 2009 for 8 years. And suddenly, it's my fault that nothing's been done, and he was going to get it done in 4. 17 years of working on the triangle, not completed. But all he needed was 4 more. Nothing on the mall. He had not talked to the mall in 6 years. The last time he talked to the mall, he'd asked them to tear off their roof, which essentially means tearing it down, and he offered them $20 million for apartments. We had fractured relationships. We'd been fixing one park every 2 years over the last 10. We have 66 parks. That's 132 years to get through our parks. Obviously, that doesn't work. We'd underinvested in our roads to the point where 40% of them were in poor condition or very poor condition. Our vehicles, average age 11 and a half years. We'd let everything go. So that's what we were left with. So what did we do? We increased the investment in parks. I couldn't get that done. I could not get that done until after the second election where the trustees were elected. We increased our investment in roads. So we've went from 9 roads to be done in 2 years to 30, or 9 areas to 32 areas. Parks, last year alone, we did 7 parks. We did major renovations. We completely renovated one of our biggest parks, John Humphrey, over the last 2 years. And we did 18 basketball courts and tennis courts and 7 pavilions, just in 1 year. That's how we were able to change things and do things differently. So that's what we're looking forward to. Tonight, I'm looking forward to answering your questions. If everyone can please be quiet, because this mic goes to the camera. It doesn't go to you, and it'll be easier to hear, and we don't want to interfere with the video feed. So we do have someone here reading questions that were submitted by all the participants here tonight, and he's reading them all because we only have 2 microphones.
Mr. McLaughlin says regularly, Orland is not safe. What have you done to keep the public safe in the last 4 years?
So in the last 4 years, so first off, you've heard him say this at the last debate, that we're not safe. And he said things like, we used to have an OPSAF program that I got rid of. Actually, that program was gotten rid of under him. Maybe he doesn't remember. It didn't exist when I got here. I had to actually research it to find out what it was, because it didn't exist. Why? Because it wasn't effective. They tried it, it wasn't effective. What we've done is we've changed the way we police somewhat. We have a great police department, always have had a great police department. But we all know that Cook County has become, under Kim Foxx, who, by the way, Kim Foxx is supported by my opponent. He supported her in the last election. Kim Foxx's policies are catch and release, and she is the crime problem that Cook County faces. Well, Cook County's crime has gone up, and it has been a challenge. We've actually driven crime down in Orland Park. So how did we do that? We did that through quality programs that we put in place. That we worked with 5 different communities for an auto theft task force. We've got task force for other crimes that we've seen a lot of. What we also have done is really increased our proactivity. So one of the things you heard the former mayor say is that call volumes went up by 70,000 in the last year. And if somebody could get the music turned off, I'd appreciate it. So call volumes went up by $70,000 over the. If you could please hold on one second. So I apologize for that interruption. So call volumes have gone up by about $70,000, or 70,000 calls over the last 4 years, okay? And what does that mean? It means that we're doing a lot more. It doesn't mean that we've had more calls from 911. What it means is that we are actually going out and visiting places more frequently, okay? So we're doing business checks proactively that we didn't do before. Those business checks count as a call, but it also helps keep crime down. We also have been stickering cars. We write more tickets. We have more full-time officers on the street because we're using part-time officers more for duties like the mall. So we're able to have more boots on the street, and at the end of the day, that leads to more calls. The other reason that we have more call volume is we have a mobile response unit that we've created over the last several months, and because mental health calls have been climbing through the roof. And those mental health calls, obviously, for COVID, also domestic disputes. So this mobile response unit is something that is unique to the country being tried here. And it's a Department of Justice approved program that we've put in place to bring a mental health professional with us when we go to a call where our officers have identified as a mental health issue. We bring a mental health professional there. It is already, in just a few months, decreased by 42% our trips to the emergency room. It's been so successful. We had 4 other towns that were supposed to join us in a year. We're adding those towns in 3 months. We're starting to add them into the system because it's that beneficial. We want to make sure that our neighbors benefit from this as well. So those are the things that we're doing. The real question becomes, what are the results of this? So the results speak for themselves. Crime has gone down all 4 years since I've been in office. And we were a safe town before. I won't criticize what the former mayor did because the former mayor and boards did a great job. But for him to sit and criticize us when crime has gone down is disingenuous and it's not right. He's trying to damage the image of Orland Park to benefit himself politically. And that is just absolutely uncalled for. He said we were the 13th safest city in Illinois in the last election, and he touted that. The same source said we're the safest city in Illinois now for the first time ever. But now suddenly it's discounted. Our crime in 2019 was the lowest it had been in 25 years. In 2020, it was down another 29%. Now he says I'm lying. Well, in 2020, Chief McCarthy sat in front of our board and said crime was at its lowest rate ever in 2019. So if I'm lying, then Chief McCarthy is lying. And he's not lying. Chief Mitchell said the same thing this year about 2020. Chief Mitchell is also not lying. So I take great offense at people saying that we're lying, because we're not. Orland Park, the stats bear it out. We are safer than we're safer than we've ever been. We have lower crime than we've ever been, but we are working very hard to keep us safe. There is no question, because what is happening in Cook County is Kim Foxx is running a catch and release program. Again, my opponent supported Kim Foxx. So who's tough on crime? I certainly am, and I think historically the boards have been, which is why Orland Park has remained so safe.
What is your stance on Illinois House Bill 3653 and why?
House Bill 3653. So House Bill 3653, I absolutely oppose House Bill 3653. I lobbied our legislators to reject House Bill 3653 and our governor to veto it. My opponent has been asked several times what his position is, and he has not taken one, which indicates to me that he supports it. HB 3653 is an anti-police, anti-law-abiding citizen bill that benefits criminals, and here's why. On the police side, mandatory body cameras, which we're okay with, except there's no funding for the towns that can't afford it. But if when an officer has a body camera on, he can't use that body camera to write his report. Why would we not want accurate reports? Because if they write any inaccuracies in the report, they can kick it out of court, and then they can make that officer where he can't testify on future cases. It kills an officer's career, because you're asking him to do everything from memory, even though he has a tool that he could actually get everything perfectly right. Also, if an officer fails to turn on his body camera, he can be charged with a Class 3 felony and thrown in jail. Let me tell you a scenario. How about if you're in a 7-Eleven, he's getting a Coke in the back of, he or she is getting a Coke in the back of the store, and someone comes in to rob it. You think the first thing that they're thinking about when they turn around is to turn on their body camera? Or are they thinking about stopping that incident? That's just one potential incident where it could be forgotten to be turned on. It's a whole nother animal. If they intentionally turn it off to hide something they've done, then absolutely they should be prosecuted, and police officers would agree with that. But to put officers in the line of fire, then anyone can file an anonymous complaint. That's a violation of the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment allows someone to face their accuser. But police officers don't have that right. That bill is horrible for police. On the law-abiding citizen front, a police officer can't remove someone who's trespassing on your property. They have to allow them to stay. Really? I don't know how you feel about that on your property, but I don't like it. How about no cash bail? This bill is a Kim Foxx, it's everything that Kim Foxx wants in a statewide bill. Every single not Cook County, but state's attorney for every county in the state except Kim Foxx opposes this bill. Every police chief in the state opposes this bill. Again, my opponent supports Kim Foxx. This is Kim Foxx's bill. He supports this bill. He would not take a stand. Leaders have to take a stand. And if you want to support your police, you need to take a stand and support your police.
When Andrew Corporation left Orland, Dan McLaughlin said, "We weren't getting a lot in sales tax, and the real estate taxes were not substantive compared to the residential development. This was a huge loss for Orland. What will you do to diversify the economy, and how does the I-80 corridor fit in?"
So you're absolutely right. The loss of Andrew Corporation was the biggest economic development mistake of Orland Park's history. We lost a Fortune 1000 company with 1,500 jobs. That walked away. You don't replace those. Fortune 1000 companies are not begging to come to Illinois. So how is Orland Park going to draw that? We can maybe take it from somewhere else in Illinois, but how many of those businesses are moving out of where they're at and staying in Illinois? They're moving out of Illinois. And that was a homegrown company that wanted to stay here. Now, it's interesting that this was asked, because at the last debate, Mayor McLaughlin said that I lied and that they were not interested in staying here. Well, I've talked to several Andrew executives, and they certainly did want to stay here. He also said that CommScope was buying them. CommScope did not buy them until the end of 2007. There was no way that he would know that CommScope was buying them at the time, because no one would give that information if somebody was trying to merge two public companies. They would go to jail for that. But here's what Andrew said when they were moving. So this refutes directly what the former mayor said. They had a press release here in August 30, 2005. And it says, "Andrew will continue calling the Chicago area its home and build upon the tradition we've established during the past 68 years in the Chicagoland area," said Ralph Faison, President and Chief Executive Officer at Andrew Corporation. "The dramatic growth of the residential and retail areas around us has created a unique development opportunity within Orland Park, and thus a high level of interest in our property. The value of our property allows us to fund to move to a new company headquarters with a world-class manufacturing facilities." And it said that it was finalizing the negotiation of 50 acres of property in the southwest suburbs, for which it will lease a newly constructed building of approximately 550,000 square feet for its cable products, manufacturing operations, and certain staff functions. The company is deciding between 3 sites within 10 miles of its current Orland Park location, depending on local tax issues, and expects to choose a site within the next 2 months. So they wanted to stay here. They wanted to be in the I-80 corridor, and we did nothing to keep them. So what do we have to do going forward? Well, what we've done is we've developed a partnership with Tinley Park and Mokina to market the I-80 corridor. We have a group called the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance. That group includes Mokina, Tinley Park, the mayor and 1 trustee from each, as well as 1 business from each town. So it's Panduit from Tinley, Ozinga from Mokina, and from Orland Park, we have American Technical Publishers. These businesses are all in the I-80 corridor. We also have the Chicago Southland Chamber of Commerce is included in this group, as well as the Will County CED, the Center for Economic Development. We work together to try and market that area, and we're marketing towards technology companies, advanced manufacturing companies, business services, the types of things we don't have here in Orland Park, especially since Andrew left.
There are 2 questions related to the triangle that are very similar. We've been dealing with the triangle for over 20 years. How can we make the triangle a success that we've been waiting for so long?
So we have been dealing with the triangle for over 20 years. And what you've been waiting for and what we were shown pictures of from 2000 to 2005, we spent almost $1 million on plans, and they kept changing. And those plans were all for small walkable buildings. In fact, the Land Development Code in 2008 said that it would be single-story or 2-story buildings along 143rd and LaGrange Road. Well, that's not what we have. So where are the failures in this? Well, to start with, we bought out businesses that were successful. Davidson Concrete, BD Lumber, hardware store. We bought those out. The ones that were friends of the mayor got good deals. The ones that weren't got squeezed. We started a TIF in 2003 without even having all the property, without having any plans for what we wanted to do there. Okay, and what a TIF does is it freezes the property tax, and then any incremental property tax you get throughout the life of the TIF goes to has to go to the infrastructure within that TIF. If there's money left over at the end, it gets spread out amongst all of the taxing bodies. So the taxing bodies all agree to it. This is a 25-year TIF, which is as long as a TIF can be. Okay. At the point I entered office, we were $40 million in the hole. We're not getting that back. We've gotten some of it back. We're about 30 now because of some of the property taxes we've gotten paid. But at the end of the day, we're not going to see that back. So the question is, what do we do going forward? What we don't do is, like in 2009 with the TIF, we still didn't have all the property, and we used eminent domain to force businesses out of business. And those businesses, by and large, got screwed over. Now, some of them did well, but most of them aren't here anymore. Okay? That was in 2009. So what did we do in 2012 timeframe, 2011, 2012? We put $64 million of our money at risk to build a publicly funded housing project. That's what we did. Why? Because we had nothing. So we had to put something there because we had no progress. So we took whatever was out there, and the developer put up $1 million, and we put up $64 million. Anyone in business want to put up just 2%, less than 2% of the money at risk? Anyone in here that's in business would take that deal anytime. And we're the ones that had to foot the bill. We ended up losing $7 million. We sold out of that shortly after I took office. That was a good deal. The deal that was on the table was to lose $14 million. So I managed to go back to the negotiating table and get $7 million more out of it. And it was good that we exited it because we had a lot of things at risk. Then we had University of Chicago come in. Now, I will not argue that University of Chicago being in Orland Park is great. However, they were looking at 2 different private land developers to use. We undercut private landowners to put them in the triangle. And you heard the former mayor say, oh, we're getting a great deal, $750,000 a year land lease. They're a non-for-profit. Remember I said we need property tax to make this work. They're a non-for-profit. They pay no property tax. A property tax on a building that size is about $1.6 million, and we're only getting $750,000 a year. We're losing $1 million a year, and after 25 years, they own it. Nobody that I know of with any sense puts a non-for-profit in a TIF. but that's what we did. So now that's what we're stuck with. So now back to the question, which is, because you needed the history of this, the question is, what do we do going forward? Well, what we do going forward is we went out to the marketplace. We did that a year after I took office. We went out to the marketplace. We chose 2 developers to give us more plans. After we saw those plans, the board chose 1 developer. It was a 5-2 vote, and we worked hard with that developer to get a deal done. So during that time, we were very, very close to having a master development agreement signed, and that was last March. And of course, then COVID hit. Of course, any developer at that point that's looking at a highly a mixed-use project with restaurants and retail, we had no idea what was going to happen, and so they put the brakes on it. We reached to about September, and they still weren't engaging. And basically, the board and I agreed on a 7-0 vote to ask them to either decide whether they're staying in the project or they're going to leave it. And then they decided that they no longer wanted to be part of the project. So then the board agreed to engage Edwards Realty, who was the number 2 choice, who had passed the first hurdle, engage them and see if they were still interested. Because we did like their plans, even though the vote was 5-2, we did like their plans. So we engaged them, and over the last 5 months, we've actually developed and entered into an agreement that we approved at the last board meeting. And that agreement says that we will work together for the next year to try and get a master development agreement. And the reason why we didn't demand a master development agreement right now is nobody really knows how COVID's going to impact the marketplace. So we're going to have to continue to test the marketplace. We do know we have a couple of restaurants that are interested right now. We have a user that potentially will fill an auditorium of 1,500 to 2,000, which would be great to have down there. We also have a 21,000 square foot office user that's interested. So we know that we have interested parties, but this agreement will allow us to get leases from those interested parties and get these buildings underway. This entire process, though, will definitely engage the public. So Edwards Realty will get public input. We've received a lot of public input over the years. We know we want a walkable area, and it's a very small area, that 11 acres. So we end up with Jefferson under their plan right now. You can see the concepts online. They have an entire block that is completely pedestrian only on the street, and a streetscape with restaurants and shops that I think people will really love. It will also tie in with the crossings across the street, which Edwards also owns. So they have a unique perspective to want to make sure those 2 things tie together. Plus, they're Orland Park people. So they've lived here this whole time wanting to see this done, and they've wanted to be engaged in this project for over 10 years. So now they are. And so hopefully we will see that go forward. But we don't know exactly what we're going to see down there, but we do have some ideas of what it might look like.
Given the economic damages caused by restrictions placed on businesses by the state during COVID, what has been the budget impact to Orland Park?
Could you repeat that again?
Given the economic damages caused by restrictions placed on businesses by the state during COVID, what has been the budget impact to Orland Park?
So the budget impact was significant. We lost about $7.5 million in revenue. So that was a huge impact. But you haven't seen us make drastic cuts. There's a reason for this. Because when I took office, we had added $99 million of debt in the previous 18 years. We had run a $5.5 million deficit for an average deficit for 18 straight years, okay? Moving forward, the first time I saw the budget projections, we were projected to go from our 30% reserve that we had in the fund. We were projected, and we want to keep 25%. We were projected by the end of that, by 2022, to have used all of those reserves, and we would have zero. We'd actually be negative. We'd actually be borrowing to fund our operating expenses. When I saw that, I said, we have to take action right away, right now. And that was with a board that was 6-1 against. So the first year, they said, well, we can't cut this and we can't cut that. Those are people. We can't cut people. We only can cut variable expenses. And the only thing that's variable are 5% of our budget. So we trimmed 40% out of that 5. So we took only 2% out of the budget. The numbers are all in the people. That's where the costs of running the village are. So the following year, I said, we have to do more. And what we were able to put into place was an early retirement program that allowed us to ultimately, over the first 3 years of my term, trim 14% out of our operating budget and take 9.5% of our full-time employees out of the system. And they were able to do so primarily through an early retirement. I think we actually, after the fact, I think there were 2 positions that we eliminated. Everyone else had the opportunity to early retire, and that's how we reduced the force and reduced our expenses. But doing so put us in a position where our reserves now are 30%. Instead of running out of our reserves, we still have our reserves. Because we had our reserves, and because the other thing that we did during that time frame is we took $37 million of debt off our books. So, and I take that back. We took more than $37 million. We took $44 million off our books in the first 3 years. We actually used some of that debt capacity in the last year. Why? Because that debt is used to fix roads, fix parks, all the things we were behind on. If we didn't do that, we just have to do it again next year, and it would just kick that down the road and get more expensive. We borrow at, one of our bonds is at 2.2%, one of them's at 1.5%. At that rate, prices for fixing roads and parks goes up more than that every year. So we're much better off fixing them on a regular schedule like we did than to do something drastic. So the first conversation I had with our village manager after COVID hit was, he was ready to cut everything because we knew how bad things were. I said, let's cut what we can that makes sense, but let's not cut our capital program, and let's keep our operations going, because people need normalcy and they need to see us doing things, and we can't stop servicing our parks. We can't stop fixing potholes. We can't stop doing that. So we elected to use the fiscal strength that we've built up over the previous 3 years, thankfully, to handle COVID without making a major change to our budget. And so at the end of 4 years, we're still down $37 million in debt. That's an average surplus of $9.25 million a year, even through COVID. We've doubled our spending on roads and parks, and we've kept our services. As one person said in one of these events that I had that wasn't televised, said, I hear about all these cuts, but I really haven't noticed a change in services. Exactly. Because we had the opportunity to do things smarter and more efficiently.
Multiple businesses have noted at board meetings a positive change in interactions with Orland Park when starting or moving their business here. What has caused that shift, and what will you continue?
So one of the things that I heard regularly when I was running for office the last time is how bad our village was in dealing with businesses. And I heard that over and over again. Now, if people were friends of the village, they seemed to get pretty good treatment. But anybody else, it was difficult. Now, as a contractor, I can say from my perspective, I never really experienced that problem. But big developers and businesses were definitely having those issues. And what I observed in my first 2 years is that we had a culture, particularly in our development services department, that said we can always ask for more. So, for example, you go out to do permits or not permits, but inspections on a permit at a building or an office or something like that. We would go there once and give them 20 things, go back there a second time, give them 15 more, go back a third time and give them 10 more. Developers and builders hate that. I said, give them 100 things the first time. They'd rather have that than 3 trips and half as many things to fix. They want to fix them. I see a lot of head nodding of people who are in real estate out here. But that's what they would rather have, because time is money to them. And they have to keep calling people back, costs them a lot of money. But we had this mindset, it's okay to not do our job right, and we can just ask them for more. I saw that when we negotiated with Von Mayoral. We had a deal, and we talked to them, we worked through everything, and our village manager sent out a letter with 2 additional requests. Well, guess what the business said? What are you giving us for those requests? So we had to increase, so we went from $7.5 million maximum to $8.5 million maximum. We could have asked for those requests up front. Instead, we just keep asking for more and keep asking for more. And the problem is, there was a mindset, and I've seen this mindset time and again, and I hear it even today from my opponent, is that they want to squeeze every dime out of every deal. Business people don't operate like that, because you lose a relationship when you try and squeeze the other guy to the very end. What you always try to do is find win-wins. That's why we were able to get Von Mayoral. Think about that. Carson's left on Labor Day. About October 15th, we had a deal and Von Mayoral was going in, and the next November, they had completely redone the interior and exterior. $25 million of renovations in 1 year, because we were attentive and we were on top of the inspections and we worked with them. And also, Simon Properties bought the property for $15 million and gave it to Von Mauer for $1. Okay, or sold it to them for $1. So those are the things that we were able to do. You heard Caputo's Market say, we heard about the vacancy at Burcott's from you on Monday. We met with you on Thursday. And the following Monday, you had an approval for an incentive package on the board floor and approved. They've never seen that in their entire time in business. That's how we do business. That's how you get businesses to come to Orland Park, is you work with them and you work quickly and you get stuff done. And that's what we've done.
During the debate on Tuesday, Mr. McLaughlin indicated he needed 4 more years to complete his projects. The ones he mentioned appeared to have started in sufficient time for good leadership and project management skills to complete. What could have been done better?
Which projects?
Does not say.
So could you repeat that whole thing again?
Sure. During the debate on Tuesday, Mr. McLaughlin indicated he needed 4 more years to complete his projects. The ones he mentioned appeared to have started in sufficient time for good leadership and project management skills to complete. What could have been done better?
So we've already talked about both of those projects. So the first one of those projects was the Triangle. So the Triangle, like I said, started in 2000. We talked about all the things that we bungled along the way and the fact that we're 17 years into it and it's still not completed. Because we never had a plan. And in 2009, we were still using eminent domain to try and get businesses and acquire those businesses. We tried to get into the development business. We should never do that. Now, sometimes villages have to do that when things are, in some towns where things are economically distressed and things have been abandoned. But that wasn't the case. All these businesses were there. So what we should have been doing is working with developers. And what we heard the former mayor and my opponent say is that the developers, no single developer could take this whole project on. Well, that should tell you something, because you're not a developer. So you think you can take the whole thing on when a developer can't take the whole thing on? That's just, to me, that's extreme arrogance to think we're better than the development market at developing things. So that's what could have been done better, is to wait for it to die its own natural death rather than try and force ourselves upon it. Okay? And one of the things that I ran into when I first got here is, on this vein, it's not a project that you're aware of, but Silver Lakes. Silver Lakes, we've all heard of, is up for sale. And it had, my first day, there was a deal on the table to buy Silver Lakes for $23 million. I was told that this was a done deal. I said, was there any due diligence done on the business? No. Well, we don't need to do due diligence on the business. We're not going to be golf course owners. I said, you're going to be a golf course owner the minute you buy it. Golf course owner, restaurant owner, bar owner, handball facility owner, retail shop owner, all these things that I'm sure the village employees in Orland Park, who've been government employees most of their life, are experts at doing. Absolutely not. We all know that. And there was no due diligence done. I knew what the due diligence would say. Anyone who's in business and has done business consulting can look at it immediately and say, well, the first thing I can tell you is that you have the labor that you're using to maintain the course will now become unionized at a government union rate. It's just, if you were making money, you're not making it anymore. It's that simple. Also, since they've been looking to sell, there were capital improvements that needed to be made, which we would end up having to do. Again, we shouldn't be in that business. Fortunately, I managed to coerce the board, if you will, to get them to agree to a due diligence. And the due diligence came back and said we shouldn't do this. And the deal got killed. And now you see it's on the market 4 years later, and there are 8 interested parties. That's how we should do things. Let the marketplace bring 8 people there. And there may be questions on this in the future, so I'll kind of let that one go for now. But the marketplace is looking at this now. That's the way we should have done things on the Triangle. Then the I-80 corridor, again, you need to engage the market. We had totally fractured we have one family that owns all the land out there with a totally fractured relationship when I got here. So the first thing we had to do was redevelop that relationship, because if that landowner won't sell, you're not putting anything in I-80. So you need to work with him. And then also realize Mokina and Tinley are dealing with the same issues, so let's work together. That's what we could have been doing, and we didn't do any of that. In fact, we basically told everyone else, talk to the hand, we're Orland Park. That doesn't work. The whole region needs to develop together. And anything that doesn't fit for us, if they can't get a deal with our landowner, I'm happy if they move to Mokina, because a lot of those people work here and they all shop here. And if there's something that doesn't fit in our corridor, I have no problems calling our neighbors to the east that have manufacturing facilities that are empty and say, hey, there's somebody that's looking, and it doesn't fit here, but if it fits there, it'll be great. Because if they do better, we do better. It's about the whole region, which is why I work so hard with the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association in that area. They don't provide our transportation dollars like the Southwest Conference of Mayors, but I still work with them a lot because it's economic development that's really important for our neighbors to the east to make sure that the whole region starts to thrive.
So there's a question regarding Silver Lakes. We have all heard about the Silver Lakes sale. What can you tell us about it?
So I can't tell you much other than what I've heard, which is not, there's no way I can tell you whether it's right or wrong. What I can tell you is that there were 8 bidders. What I have heard, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, I've heard that they all included maintaining at least 18 holes of golf. It ranged from big builders to small to regional builders, national builders, and also some golf course management companies. That's what I've heard. I don't know who they've chosen, if they've chosen a partner or not. I can tell you that going forward, there's all these worries about Silver Lakes. First off, 70 acres of it are wetlands. They can't be developed. Okay, so 70 acres that, so there are 70 acres. So someone asked if it was 78%. No, 70 acres out of the roughly 300 are wetlands and can't be developed. So there'll be significant green space. Also, it's all zoned for 1 acre lots. So E1 1 acre lots. No builder is going to come in to build 1 acre lots. They can't make money on that. So they're going to have to come to the village to get zoning. To get zoning, they have to go through public hearings and deal with the public and answer the public's questions. They also have to go through our planning commission to answer their questions. So this is a long process that they're going to have to go through because as a village, we want to make sure that whatever they do does not hurt us financially, does not damage our schools, does not hurt our schools. Because if we allowed a massive housing project with high density, our schools would get crushed. We can't have that happen. So those are all things that we're considering, but the marketplace will decide, and it has to be something that they can make money at, but it has to be something that also fits the village's long-term visions for that area. And I was excited to hear, and if it's true, that all of the projects included at least 18 holes of golf. I think that would be great.
During the last debate, Mr. McLaughlin mentioned that his slate of candidates was young and would require his guidance. Do you share that view about your own slate?
So yeah, he said his candidates that are with him needed his guidance. This is my take. When I try and pick trustees, I want trustees that can help guide me and provide input to me, because I don't have all the answers. I want to surround myself with a team that has different points of view. I think if you look at the first set of trustees that I supported, we have a real estate agent who's been in Orland for over 30 years. We have an accountant, a CPA, and then we also have a sales executive in technology. So we have some business experience, we have a financial experience, we have development experience. We brought that to the table. A nice mix. If you look at this group of trustees, so Sean Compass, who's reading the questions right now, an IT consultant who's one of the smartest people I know and knows how to solve problems. That's what we need, someone like that. Brian Reardon, who's an attorney that's done a lot of work with school districts, that's done a lot of work with police, again, brings experience to the table and legal experience to the table that we wouldn't otherwise have. Then lastly, Joni Radishevsky. She's a marketing person in her firm. And she's on our economic development advisory board now. What better than to have someone like that to helping us with economic development? So again, 3 really good people. And we do have a young person on the slate as well, Gus Lekas, and their young person, it's great that young people are getting involved. They've put their young person in a position to vote on things right now, 2 years out of college. The young person we have already is a father with 4 kids. He lived in Palos, and he's lived in Orland Park, I think now for 6 years, and has his entire family here, involved in the sports organizations. And yes, he's young. He's the same age actually as my middle son, graduated the same year. But he's an accountant, and he's going to be the clerk. He's not going to be voting on items. He's going to be keeping records, which an accountant is very good at doing. He knows how to do that. And he's going to get the opportunity to observe and learn and gain experience. So in the future, hopefully he becomes a very good trustee if he decides to in the future. So that's how you develop people. But it's really important as a mayor to surround yourself with people that can help guide you. Not that you can guide and steer and get to vote your way all the time. That's just a recipe for failure. And I think we saw that with the Triangle in particular, and we saw that with some of the other decisions that have been made with our money, and including what was going to be made, which was Silver Lakes.
The village leadership team has turned over the past few years. What benefits does the new team bring to the village?
So our new team is very talented. It's very challenging when you lose your top 12 leaders in the village, and that's what happens when you have an early retirement program and you have a lot of people who've been here a long time. But we lost, I think on one weekend, we lost 500 years of experience. That's a lot to lose in an organization. And it's a challenge. But it's also an opportunity. Because with any organization that has people that have been here for that long, there are cultural things that need to be changed. There are operational things that need to be changed, and the way we've always done it may not be what we need. May not be the way to operate with 13.9% cut in operating expenses. We need to operate differently. So you need new ideas. So when you bring a new leadership team, you get new ideas and you get fresh ideas. I think of all of those leaders, 3 of them were homegrown promotions, and those were in departments that I think were doing the best. So it made sense, and we certainly didn't find anyone else that would fit the bill. In one case, Chief Mitchell was handpicked by Chief McCarthy, and not only was he handpicked, but he was groomed for that position, and he's done an amazing job. So we actually did not go out to interview for that. We gave him the interim title, and he was doing such a fantastic job, we made him the permanent chief. But everyone else, we went out and we didn't do patronage hiring like was done in the past. At the end of the day, we went out and interviewed. We interviewed and interviewed and interviewed. If we didn't like the candidates, we sent it back out again and interviewed again. That's what we did. So we interviewed to find the best people. And when you find the best people and you don't do patronage, you end up getting much better product and much better services. So I think what we have now, after just less than 18 months, all of our leaders less than 18 months, think about that. And they did wonderful things through COVID. Came together as a team through COVID. And were all 12 of the hires great hires? Maybe not. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that we have to look at and try and develop more or aren't ready for the job. That's going to happen when you hire 12 people. But at the end of the day, we got some really talented young people with fresh ideas that aren't buried inside this organization, so that we can make the changes necessary to do things more efficiently, still provide services, and save us money. And those are the things that we need to do, because we have to improve our operations.
Mr. McLaughlin has indicated that he will not take any pay, contrary to what he did during his prior 24 years as mayor. I'm confused. As I understand, he is receiving a government pension and thus not eligible to receive any pay as mayor. Can you please clarify? So, as you all know, in the last election, at the very last second, the board voted unanimously to raise the pay to $150,000. And I heard this when I knocked on doors. I heard, a mayor can earn $150,000. And this is a big town. They certainly can. And I think that I have. On Mayoral alone, anyone in the development business would say anything that got done that quick probably covered the pay for probably the whole 4 years even. But at the end of the day, that's not our form of government. Our form of government is a village manager council form of government. So that means the village manager does most of the day-to-day operations. So the mayor doesn't need to be full-time. But by law, it has to be passed. The salary has to be passed 6 months before the election, and that will be the salary for the next 4 years. That's the law. The former mayor, even during the last election, when he was pressed on it, he said, well, he'll get it too. Exactly. Now he's blaming me for getting it. I'm not the guy that raised the pay. He did. But it really wasn't about the pay. The way our pension system works, your pension is based on your highest annual salary for out of your highest 4 years of your last 10. He already had 32 years of service. He's essentially maxed out on his pension after one more term. So that pay raise from $40,000 to $150,000 would have raised his pension by $2.1 million over 20 years. So it would have raised it to 6 figures from in the 30s. Just one term. That's what that was about. It was not about the pay. Now, I ran and I said repeatedly, it's the law. I will take the pay and I will earn it as a full-time mayor, and I believe that I have. But I also said I will work to make it back to part-time that is consistent with our form of government, and we did that as well. So that was actually passed under the
under the other board 2 years ago that it would go back down to 40,000. But most importantly, I did not take a pension. And when the new board came in, we eliminated pension eligibility for elected officials. We cannot do that for employees, but we can do that for elected officials, and we did. So none of the new trustees are taking a pension either. And going forward, they cannot take a pension. Dan McLaughlin started taking his pension in June after the election and is currently getting the pension. Legally, you cannot take both a pension and a salary for the same position. So when he is saying that he can't take a salary, when he's not taking a salary, it's because he can't take a salary because he'd be violating the law. So he's being disingenuous. He's already getting a over $1 million pension as a mayor.
You touched on roads and parks in the past, but I'm not sure that this was completely addressed, or if it may not have been part of this question. I've noticed a lot more construction in our parks and on our local roads over the last year or two. What are your plans with regards to keeping our roads and parks in good condition?
So as I said, when I arrived, 40%, we did a study, and 40% of our roads are in poor condition or very poor condition. And we were underinvesting them by more than half. So we need to essentially do 2 million square feet of roads a year to stay up with them, because a road lasts about 20 years. And we were doing $1 million square feet, and we had been for some years. So we fell way behind on our roads. So we put in a program, as soon as the new trustees came on board, we put in a program that basically doubled our spending on our local roads. And so over the last 18 months, or 2 years now almost, we've increased, like I said, from 9 road areas to 32 road areas. But our plan is to do this for another 3 or 4 years, and that will get us back on a more regular schedule. And so we won't go back down to what it was before, because that was not enough, but there'll be some place in between so we can have a regular, and after 5 years, we'll be down to about 10% in poor condition. So that's much more manageable than the 40% number, because what we want to do is make sure the next board has a regular spending every year to keep up with everything. We just didn't do that. We kicked the can down the road, and that leaves a big pile, a big mess for the next board, and that's what we experienced. We don't want to do that for this board. When it comes to parks, same thing. 1 park every 2 years. What we were doing is we were totally leveling a park, even if some of it was in good condition. I said, how about let's do this differently? Not only will we double our spending on this, but we will also look at things differently. So we analyzed all our parks. And we analyzed, some of our parks are passive and don't really have any equipment, so we analyzed 54 parks in all. Of those, I believe 40 of them had something in poor condition. So we said over the next 5 years, we're going to make sure that everything in these parks that's in poor condition is fixed. So we set out a program that fixes everything that was in poor condition, and we're also fixing other things as well. Then we'll do that study again. But like I said, just in 1 year, we got to 7 major renovations, 18 basketball courts and tennis courts, and 7 pavilions. Yes, we doubled our spending, but we also started spending it differently and more wisely. And it spreads the value out throughout the village, and also keeps up with our parks. That's a much more sustainable way to do things. And in 5 years, we'll do that again. Now, that also leaves the other question, which is what about our major parks? John Humphrey, Centennial, and Schuessler. So one thing we did is we did a major renovation to John Humphrey. It was built in the late 80s. It was pretty much unusable for its original purpose. And so we completely re-renovated it. And in the spring, it will open up. So you've got 5 beautiful new baseball fields, a completely redone pavilion and concession area, all new asphalt. It's beautiful. So we'll have that. And that's back online. Before, we weren't able to schedule it for baseball. Now it's going to be back online for baseball. So, and then we also found a home for the pioneers temporarily at Centennial, and we started a master development plan, or excuse me, a master plan for all of our parks, which includes primarily Schuessler and Centennial, and then also the remaining part of John Humphrey, to determine what's the best use for this going forward. So we're in the process of doing that now, and that will be done this year, and then we'll do major renovations on Centennial and on Schuessler Park. And as part of that, we will have an area, we do know for sure we need an area that is football focused, because we never did that in the past. When Centennial was built, they ignored football, which made no sense. So we're going to make sure that we have a football-focused area, and that area will have fields that can be used for soccer and lacrosse when football's not in session. So all of those things are being considered, how many soccer fields we need, etc. So we're looking at all of that in those, because those big renovations are separate from all of our smaller parks.
Our last question brings us back to economic diversity. What are we seeing today in Orland Park with regards to economic diversity?
So back to our biggest economic diversity issue was the fact that we let Andrew Corporation go. That was diversity. That was a advanced manufacturing facility, 1,500 jobs, a Fortune 1000 company that's gone. So that hurt because that made us even more dependent on retail. And we've seen what's happening with the e-commerce. Now, e-commerce is not going to kill retail. Retail's still going to be there. E-commerce is a channel. Retail's still going to be there. Our mall is going to survive. It's top 1% mall in traffic, top 10% in revenue. Our mall is going to be fine. I'm more concerned about our strip centers because retail is going to concentrate. So I'm worried about our outlying strip centers and how they fare. So how do we bring diversity? Well, one of the things that we're seeing a lot of is medical. We have an oncology group coming to one of our college campuses there that has been vacated at the mall, and we have a cardiovascular group going into the other one. And hopefully those deals will be finalized in the next month. So the one in the front has been vacant for 7 or 8 years, and now that's going to be taken. So we're starting to see more medical campuses come here. Obviously, we saw some grocery. Now we're probably full with our grocery. Burcott's being replaced by Caputo's, Pete's Fresh Market going into Art Van. So what other kind of diverse businesses? We believe, based on what happened with COVID, that the move of millennials out to the suburbs has been accelerated significantly because people may not want to work at home. Even though they've worked at home, they may not want to work at home, but they don't want 3 hours of commuting every day. So they want their office to be close. So we know from one of our Economic Development Advisory Board members that all of his clients are plotting where all of their employees live and trying to build satellite offices throughout the suburbs. So we believe there's going to be a lot of office market use. And now, if an office market comes out to the southwest suburbs, are they going out to South Frankfurt or New Lenox? Probably not. Are they going into Posen and Harvey and those areas? Probably not. They're coming to Orland Park. So we need to be prepared for that. The hard part right now is that banks aren't loaning on speculation. So you need to actually have tenants available already. That's where the triangle is going to be very helpful because there's a plan there for building 80 to 100,000 square feet of office space. So that will really help us try to diversify that. University of Chicago will continue to expand. Northwestern will continue to expand. So we'll see that. Out in the I-80 corridor, we're still looking for, one of the things we're going to see, I believe, because of COVID, is we're going to see more biopharmaceutical manufacturing come back to the States because we do not want to be dependent on foreign governments to getting us what we need. So we'll see more of that. So there'll be some opportunities there. So those are the types of things that I think we'll see in the future. Also, on the retail front, we'll be looking at maybe some entertainment. So you're already seeing that with AMC going into the Sears. Now, I know it hasn't started yet. They actually had started construction on the interior and stopped everything when COVID hit. We know what's happening with the movie theater industry, so they're waiting for the shakeout and when they can open back up. But my understanding as of just 2 weeks ago, AMC is still committed to that site. They're just waiting to when things are opened back up. So the sooner that Illinois loosens its restrictions and allows businesses to open, the sooner we'll see that. However, what you've seen in Orland Park, look at what Orland Park's brought in through COVID. During my 4 years, we brought over 500 businesses. We know about Von Mauer, but think about what's come during COVID. Duluth Trading, Stan's Donuts, just to name 2 right off the top of my head. Moran Family of Brands, which has 6 brands out of state and 50 employees. We have Pete's Fresh Market is coming. Angelo Caputo's Market is coming. We have Clean Eats opened up. We just had Flavs and the Vegan Eats open up next to the mall. We have 2 restaurants going in on Harlem. All of those things are coming when COVID's happening. We're in a great position. We're already hearing lots, and I just told you about the oncology group and the cardiovascular group that are coming. This is during COVID. We're in a great position when COVID ends and companies start loosening the purse strings of getting people to come out here. And that's what we need. We're seeing last year, believe it or not, our permits in 2020 for construction were higher than they were in 2019. And in 2021, they're higher year to date than they were in 2020. So we're in a great position. I know that my opponent's trying to say that the world is falling and everything is coming to an end in Orland Park. It's not. We're doing great. That's all the questions. Do we have any other questions?
So some of the questions tonight were economic development related. Yesterday, actually, I had a reason to talk to development. He did say, this is a compliment to us, but he said that since '07, the inquiries from developers and contractors in the village for our available spaces, as they check them out, is at its greatest peak in 14 years, I guess. So are we at a point now where we need to do a new comprehensive plan? And a lot of our residential pieces we got going on are, we got the new townhouses at 143rd and 80th. Martha's a deposit on every property. So with our pieces that are left, do we have the right pieces available for the developers? Do we need more incentives? Do we know which places should be residential? We want to maximize the potential, but it sounds like as the developers are searching, we're on everyone's list.
So to summarize the statement in the question is that since 2007, we're at the highest inquiry we've had since 2007. So we're peaking as far as inquiries that we've had. And the question is it time for a new comprehensive plan? Absolutely. So that's actually in the plan for next year, is to do a new comprehensive and strategic plan, including what do we want our residential to look like. One of the problems we have is that we have small pockets available, and we have all the big swaths are owned by one owner, and they're really have been unwilling to give it up. Now that could change with Silver Lake, so that might actually be a positive. But we have to turn it into a positive. So that's part of the comprehensive plan, is to make sure what we're putting in where and how we're taking in, what kind of residential do we need? All of those things come into play. Then obviously there's the business side. Do some things need to be changed in zoning so that we can attract certain businesses into certain areas? Are other things need to be restricted because we don't want businesses in a certain area? So that is part of the comprehensive plan that we're planning on doing this year, but we were not going to start that. They're collecting data now. We're not starting that till after the new term because it did not make sense to start that with one mayor and the potential that there's a different administration.
What they're calling inoculation, the mRNA vaccines, the FDA approved them as experiments, and it is continuing to be an experiment. Now I hear J.B. Pritzker is talking about he likes the idea of passports to prove that you've gotten these inoculations. Do you have any idea where that's going or any input? I mean, because
I have no idea where it's going. This goes back to the beginning of COVID. What you get publicly is when we get the information as mayors. We don't get any input before that. We don't get asked anything about that. It's one person making the decision and dictating to all of us. So you know what I know regarding that. Do I agree with that? Absolutely not. I don't think that's something we can do in America. I think that's inappropriate. I think we have certain requirements coming from certain countries where we know that they have to be vaccinated from certain countries for certain illnesses. We do have that. But for American citizens, I just can't see that you can do that and stop us from going to places. So.
That's where we are.
Mayor, for all the things you felt you've accomplished in your first 4 years, what are the things that are really gnawing at you that you really want to get at?
Can you stop for 1 second? If you could not talk so that I could hear him. Thank you. Okay. Yes, because I couldn't hear anything you said.
For all the things you felt you've accomplished in your first 4 years, what are the one or two things that you really have high passion for, that you really want to try and accomplish, get after in your second term?
So the question is, with everything that was accomplished in the first 4 years, what are the things that you really want to accomplish in the next 4 years? So what I really want to accomplish in the next 4 years is I want to continue to execute the plan we've put in place when it comes to our infrastructure, our roads, our parks. I want to make sure that we've started the process of, if not completed, Schuessler Park and started Centennial Park. I want to make sure that stuff is well in place and running on track and on time and on target, so we have a plan that we can sustain over time. So that's number one. Number two, I want to see our economic development. So what do I want to see from an economic development standpoint? I want to see us advance the triangle. It's not going to be done in 4 years. I'd like to see, I definitely want to see some groundbreakings and some new things in there, but it probably will not all be done. That's probably unrealistic to think it'll all be done. The I-80 corridor, any project in there is probably a 2 or 3 year lead time. It would be great if by the end of 4 years we have something breaking ground out there. But that might be more than we can expect, just because Illinois is so difficult to bring businesses into Illinois, and Illinois is so business unfriendly right now. But we'll continue to work on that. But the two things that I think for sure are staying on track with our infrastructure, and then the triangle, I think, will be well underway. Not quite complete, but well underway by that time.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everyone for all your questions tonight. And in closing, what I'd like to say is I really hope, I think in the last 4 years that I've earned your vote. 90% of what I said I would accomplish has either been done or has been started. So if you go back to 1983, when my opponent first was on the village board, I was a junior at Sandburg High School playing golf. Since that time, I went to Arizona State with a bachelor's in aerospace engineering. I went to Duke with an MBA. I have 3 tours over in Saudi Arabia in support of Iraq, including over 40 combat missions and 150 combat hours in an F-15E as an instructor Wizzo. And what I like to tell people is, when I left here in 1983, and when I came back in 1998, a lot happened. We built Humphrey, we built Centennial, we built the Village Hall Complex, the Civic Center, we built the Sportsplex, all of the roads that support all of that, a new public works facility. All of that was done in those 15 years. And our debt went from 0 to 13 million. I think that's very fiscally responsible when you're building all of that. From 1998 to 2016, we built a new police department, and that's it. And it cost 12 million and came in under budget, which was great. Ed Schusser did a great job managing that project. And Chief McCarthy, great job managing that project. We built a police station, that is it. And from 1998 to 2016, our debt went from the 12 million or 13 million to 111 million. What did we do with that money? We wasted it on trying to play developer on the triangle. That's what we did. So, I moved here in 1998. I watched all of those changes. I watched that happen. I coached OAA. I coached Magic basketball and baseball as well. Watched my kids grow up. Started 2 businesses. I have sold one since I've been mayor. And in 2017, I ran for mayor. And since I've run for mayor, we lowered that debt from 111 million down to 74. $37 million in debt. We've taken 13.9% of our operating expenses out. We've lowered our full-time workforce by 10%. All that helped us get through COVID. We've done all of that in just a short period of time. What else did we do? We eliminated pensions for elected officials, and I'm not taking one. We lowered the salary not only for the mayor's position, but also for the trustees. Since COVID was so difficult, we brought the trustee pay back down to the mayor's pay. My pay is at the 2004 level. We brought the trustees' pay down to that as well. We put all of our meetings on audio and video and increased our transparency. We did that. As I've already said, we've increased our investment in parks and roads and changed how we're fixing all of those. I'm extremely proud of all the things that we have accomplished. And I think that what's been done over the last 4 years and has earned the right to have another 4 to see that through. And I'm asking for your vote. And I want to thank you all very much for joining me tonight. And please get out and vote. Early voting is from 9 to 5 at the township, Monday through Saturday. On Sundays, it's from 10 to 4. And election day is April 6th at your usual polling location. Thank you very much.